Coming up on The World Today. Nigeria receives first batch of about 4 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warns of potential fourth COVID-19 surge in the country. Singapore's Prime Minister asked Myanmar's military to release elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. The first batch of COVID-19 vaccines, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines, has arrived in the country via an Emirates airline flight at about 11 in the morning at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. On the ground to receive the vaccines were the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Boss Mustafa, the Ministers of Health and Information, Dr. Osage Hanire, and Mr. Lai Mohammed, among other members of the federal government delegation. Let's remember the vaccines were manufactured at the Serum Institute of India. Our correspondent, Gloria Mizuke, spoke with the Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador Abhay Thakur, about this.
This is the first vaccine approved by Nigeria, by NAFDAC, for emergency use authorization, the COVID-19 vaccine under AstraZeneca license, manufactured by Serum Institute of India in Pune, the world's largest vaccine manufacturer. We are confident. We have so far supplied more than 36 million vaccine doses to nearly 36 countries. We are looking forward to supplying to at least 15 more. Nigeria is one of the first few countries in Africa to receive this. We have seen excellent results of both the Covishield vaccine as well as the second authorized vaccine in India, Covaxin, and we are confident that this will have excellent results as they have had in the rest of the world. We have also looked at and been informed about the initial priorities being drawn up by the PTF, Nigeria being Africa's largest democracy, India being the world's largest, by the way, has very robust systems for reaching the fruits of economic growth, of social growth, of health sector benefits to large sections of its needy population. I am confident that in partnership with the government of Nigeria, the vaccines made in India will reach all those who are in need and boost Nigerian health and economic growth.
Are we expecting more doses from India?
Yes, we are expecting much more. I cannot immediately say the numbers because this is something that has to be decided by the Presidential Task Force, but I can say that tens of millions of doses at least, of course, of other vaccines as well, which get approved by and by, depending on when their trials get completed. But yes, this is the flagship vaccine, and we are looking forward to much greater supplies, several times more supplies of this vaccine from India. I would also like to say that as a gesture of goodwill, in addition to these supplies through COVAX, India will also be donating 100,000 doses of vaccines for Nigeria, for which we got the approval yesterday, and it will be coming shortly as well.
Public enlightenment needs to be upscaled as Nigeria prepares to begin rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines in the country. That's a suggestion of consultant and public health physician Dr. Seun Akiyemi. Top government officers, he says, should be first recipients of the jab and then health workers. And then that should be followed up with data and statistics on distribution of the vaccines across the country.
In my opinion, I don't think the government has done enough. I think the National Orientation Agency has to do more. I think by now the whole airwaves should have been awash with messages to douse, to correct the myths surrounding this vaccine. There are so many conspiracy theories going on, especially in social media, about the vaccine. Even from religious circles, there are so much doubt, so much fear. I think we need to do a lot more to assuage people's fear and to build confidence. But more than anything that we can say, I think by tomorrow, I would be expecting that the president should be vaccinated publicly, as we've seen all around the world. members of the Federal Executive Council should be immunized to show that this thing is safe. I expect governors to come out and be vaccinated. That is more than what anyone can say. I believe the greatest confidence building measure that we can take so that people will have confidence in this vaccine. But if we're just talking and people do not see our leaders take this vaccine, there will still be doubts, and these doubts will persist. I think we need to do a lot more to make sure that people have confidence in this vaccine. I was delighted when I heard that the government is thinking in the right direction, just like the Honorable Minister said. We have to roll out very systematically and strategically. First and foremost, we need to prioritize our health workers. Why? Because they are on the forefront. And if they get infected, our health system may crumble, and then they might transmit the infection to patients when they come to the hospital. So I expect that we'll prioritize health workers as much as possible, and then the elderly, 60 or 65 years and above, as well as those with comorbidities, diabetes, hypertension, or those who have diseases that will make them even more susceptible to this infection than the general population. So I believe we should prioritize, we should roll out systematically, and then we should allow our figures, our data, to dictate how we go, how this will be distributed per state and then throughout this country. I think we should be data-driven and it should not just be done haphazardly.
The spread of highly contagious coronavirus variants is threatening to fuel a potential fourth surge of cases in the U.S. That's according to the head of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Rochelle Walensky. Dr. Walensky says about 70,000 new cases a day had been recorded last week, a very high number. There were also 2,000 deaths a day in the same period. There are many different versions or variants of COVID-19 circulating, but health experts are particularly concerned about a few which appear to be more contagious, including those first detected in the UK, South Africa, and Brazil.
Please hear me clearly. At this level of cases with variants spreading, we stand to completely lose the hard-earned ground we have gained. These variants are a very real threat to our people and our progress. Now is not the time to relax the critical safeguards that we know can stop the spread of COVID-19 in our communities, not when we are so close. We have the ability to stop a potential fourth surge of cases in this country. Please stay strong in your conviction. Continue wearing your well-fitted mask and taking the other public health prevention actions that we know work. Ultimately, vaccination is what will bring us out of this pandemic. To get there, we need to vaccinate many more people.
Out of this pandemic, but how quickly we exit this crisis depends on...
Our correspondent Maria Bird is standing by in Washington. Maria, how are Americans reacting to this warning coming from the CDC?
Thank you, Amarachi, for having me. Americans obviously have been very concerned about the COVID-19 virus and the coronavirus and the various variants that exist. We know that we have seen a couple of these variants in the eastern region, and now it's pretty much throughout the United States where we've seen cases of these variants. And so obviously the CDC is asking people to continue with the mask wearing, to even if they can wear the N95 masks, which have greater protection. They're basically saying that many of the cloth masks that people have been wearing are not as protective for the various variants of the disease. But I think the greater question is that many states have had orders for children to begin to go back to school. Restaurants have begun to reopen. And so the reopening process of the U.S. has started. And so will this put a halt on the reopening process, I think, is more of the concern of Americans, because they obviously do not want to put their children at risk, but also themselves at risk when going to various places. And we're entering into warmer seasons in most parts of the U.S. And so as we move into the warmer climate seasons, we're going to see many people going out more, which means more possibility for interaction and obviously the spread of the virus.
If I'm hearing you correctly, Maria, you're saying that some states have begun loosening those restrictions, those COVID-19 restrictions, which might be the reason why there is a rise in the number of new infections. According to Dr. Walensky, 2% increase. Is that what's responsible, or there's more to this?
There's definitely more to this. I think that many people have begun to understand, social distancing, mask wearing, but at a very limited amount. And I think with these variants, they're saying that the spread potential is much greater. And so when you see that, then people don't really know how to respond. And so I think they figured out how to respond to the initial virus that hit the U.S. But now we're in a place where this increased potential for spread is in our midst. And you're exactly right. I mean, reopening could definitely play a role in that. But I think that the reopening process is not taking into account of the possibility of these variants spreading in a much different way than the novel virus.
So the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine is expected to be rolled out this week. Could you talk a bit about that? Plus, Mexico requesting the United States to share vaccines with them.
Yes, we're expecting Johnson & Johnson's rollout. People are very excited about this potential rollout due to the fact that it is going to be just a single dose in order to be vaccinated. There has been some concern and question in the community, is it as effective as the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine? And I think that has been pretty much dispelled. But again, you still have those who are questioning the ability for this vaccine to be as effective. But you'll begin to see it, I believe, in the coming days. We'll see a couple million more people obviously vaccinated. We've met the halfway point where the president was hoping to meet 100 million in the next couple of months. And so I think that we're well on our way with the additional doses from Johnson & Johnson and their ability to produce the vaccine at what it seems to be a very fast rate, and the fact that it's only one dose to be vaccinated, which will allow people to have greater immunity a bit faster. And you mentioned Mexico.
Yes, indeed. Go on.
You mentioned Mexico, and the president met with the president of Mexico yesterday. And so President Biden has been very clear that his number one focus is getting Americans vaccinated. The world is aware of how America has really been just stunted by this virus and has really had a hard time with battling and combating the virus. And so knowing that we still have a long way to go with being able to vaccinate Americans, I think that he has put pretty much a halt on being able to share vaccines with Mexico. And he's focusing right now on many of the immigration and the migration issues that exist. Trying to help create jobs in Mexico has been his number one concern. And that was the focus of his conversation yesterday. And I know that many are questioning, well, the U.S. has, they're right there bordering one another. So why would it be that the U.S. Would not want to share vaccines? But I think that due to the fact, as you said, we have a 2% rise of cases, he's really trying to ensure that every vaccine is able to be utilized to vaccinate Americans.
Maria, thanks again for bringing us up to speed, and do stay safe out there.
Thank you so much for having me.
Still ahead on the program. A painting by former British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill sells for £7 million in London. We'll have more on this. Stay with us. Welcome back. International pressure is growing on the Myanmar junta to release elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The latest coming from the Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, who's asked the military to allow Suu Kyi to be released to allow the country move forward. He, however, warned against Western sanctions, saying that it would hurt the people rather than the military.
To have to go back and have the military take over again may or may not be according to the Constitution, but it's an enormous tragic step back for them because there's no future that way. And then to arrest Aung San Suu Kyi as well as her ministers and the president and charge them with walkie-talkie offenses and things like that, I don't think that's going to help solve the problem. So you really have to get back, release Aung San Suu Kyi, negotiate with her and her team, and work out a peaceful way forward for Myanmar. Outsiders have very little influence on this. You can ostracize them, you can condemn them, you can pass resolutions or not, but it really has very little influence on what the Myanmars will do. It had zero influence the last time round, and the only impact was, for lack of anybody willing to talk to them, they fell back on those people who were willing to talk to them, which was China and to some extent India. And it was an uncomfortable position for them. And well, but it did not cause them to decide, I must do what the Americans or the Europeans or even the other ASEAN countries would have preferred them to do.
Back here in Nigeria, 279 students of the government girls' secondary school, Jangibe, have been released after 4 days in captivity. The governor of Zamfara State, Bello Matawale, who received the girls at 5 a.m. today in Gusau, the state capital, says they were returned safely without any ransom paid and that they are in good health. According to him, they have been in discussion with the abductors and reached an agreement leading to the release of the girls. This release comes 3 days after boys at the Government Science College in Kagara, Niger State, also regained freedom from their abductors.
Today, in this moment, I am full of joy and happiness for seeing the safe returns of these my children. It was on Friday, which to me is a Black Friday, when these young children were kidnapped from Jangibe Girls Secondary School. Since when the incidents happened, myself, my family, the whole security and my cabinet, we did not sleep. With our ulamas and our leaders, we have been praying for several tons of these our children. With the help of the security agencies of the state, we mobilize them with securities and vehicles to go and convey these children. Since 11 o'clock in the morning, they are on the route to get where these children are. Since then, we are alive with all my securities and my people in the government waiting for the arrival of these blessed children. Alhamdulillah, now we have received you. The numbers were kidnapped is 279, and no one was missing. All of the 279 are present here.
The United States has announced sanctions on Russians over the poisoning of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. The sanctions will target 7 senior Russian officials and 14 entities involved in chemical production. It comes after U.S. intelligence concluded that the Russian government was behind the near-fatal nerve agents attack on Navalny in Siberia last year. He is the most high-profile critic of President Vladimir Putin. But Russia says any new sanctions by the United States over the treatment of jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny will not achieve their goal and would merely worsen already strained relations. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov asked that Moscow will respond in kind to any new U.S. sanctions over the treatment of Navalny. The Kremlin has denied any role in Navalny's illness, saying it has seen no proof that he was poisoned. Meanwhile, the United States U.S. State Department has criticized recent detentions of pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong, saying the national security law imposed by Beijing is being used to stifle dissent. During a press briefing, State Department spokesman Ned Price says the United States is calling on Hong Kong authorities to release those being held and drop charges against them. He also says Washington continues to call on Beijing to stop undermining Hong Kong's autonomy.
We call on the Hong Kong authorities to immediately release those still held and to drop the charges against them. Political participation should never be a crime. These individuals simply sought to exercise their rights by participating or helping others to participate in elections. This is yet another example of how the national security law is being used to stifle dissent, not to improve security. We continue to call on Beijing to stop undermining Hong Kong's autonomy and its democratic process, and to uphold China's obligations under the Sino-British Joint Declaration. When it comes to the people of Hong Kong, we continue to stand with them. We continue to stand with their aspirations for nothing more than the system that they have been promised.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for joint efforts from the international community to lift Yemen out of the current humanitarian crisis. While staging an online high-level pledging event for Yemen on Monday, the UN chief says more than 20 million civilians in Yemen are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance and protection as farming is sweeping across the country. He has that the war is threatening a whole generation of Yemenis, with 4 million local people displaced by continuing conflicts.
The only path to peace is through an immediate nationwide ceasefire and a set of confidence-building measures, followed by an inclusive Yemeni-led political process under United Nations auspices and supported by the international community. This is the 5th time we have convened the high-level pledging event to respond to the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. The bitter truth is that we will convene a 6th event next year unless the war ends.
And as we end the programme, a painting by former British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill, which was owned by Hollywood actress Angelina Jolie, has been sold for £7 million at an auction in London. The sale price was almost 4 times the top pre-sale estimate, and it beat the previous record for a Churchill painting, which was just under £1.8 million. The Tower of Koutoubia Mosque, painted in Marrakesh during World War II, was sold to an anonymous buyer. Interesting piece of art. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.